The People's Republic of China is the heir of one of the world's oldest civilizations, and today is one of the main players on the global stage both economically and politically. Located in the east of Asia, this huge country is one of the largest states in the world in terms of both territory and population. For many centuries, China was an empire, and in the 20th century, through revolutions, wars, and reforms, it reached its current political system and economic model. China's population exceeds 1.4 billion, which makes it one of the most populous countries in the world. Although the majority of the population are Han Chinese, there are officially dozens of ethnic minorities: Uyghurs, Tibetans, Mongols, Zhuangs, and others. Managing such a large and multi-ethnic population creates serious challenges in infrastructure, education, healthcare, and employment. In recent decades, the Chinese government has implemented a policy of massive urbanization, stimulating migration from rural areas to cities and drawing millions of people into the industrial and service sectors. As a result, cities such as Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen have turned into global centers of finance and technology. The turning point in China's development was the Reform and Opening Up policy launched under Deng Xiaoping in the late 1970s. The planned economy was gradually complemented by market mechanisms. Conditions were created for the development of the private sector, and special economic zones were established to attract foreign investment. This course turned China into the factory of the world. Thanks to cheap labor and relatively low production costs, the country became the center of global production networks. Over the decades, millions of people rose above the poverty line, and a middle class began to form. In 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union was an important turning point, both in the international system and for China. The fall of the USSR sent two important signals. On the one hand, the classical model of the socialist camp had failed. On the other hand, the Western world, led by the United States, rose to a dominant position on the global stage. In this new situation, China made several strategic decisions. First, learning from the Soviet experience, China declared political stability and centralized control of power as priorities, avoiding radical political reforms and emphasizing economic modernization instead. In other words, the approach of economy first, possible political changes later, was chosen. Second, after the end of the Cold War, China began to integrate more actively into the global economic system. Accession to the World Trade Organization, the rapid growth of foreign trade, and an export-oriented industrialization policy were strengthened in this period. The post-Soviet space that emerged after the collapse of the USSR also opened up new political and economic opportunities for China. Cooperation with the Central Asian republics expanded in the fields of energy, transport, and trade. In this region, China began to increase its influence through investment projects and the Belt and Road Initiative. At a time when Russia's sphere of influence was weakening and the West had not yet fully consolidated its position, this provided China with additional room for maneuver. At the same time, the collapse of the Soviet model also influenced ideological debates in China. The party leadership began to adapt the classical Marxist-Leninist model to local conditions and brought the concept of socialism with Chinese characteristics to the forefront. This concept was an attempt to reconcile, on the one hand, elements of a market economy and, on the other hand, the political monopoly of the Communist Party. As a result, China formed its own hybrid system, which corresponds neither to a fully socialist nor to a classical capitalist model. In the modern era, China is investing heavily in strategic areas such as high technology, artificial intelligence, space research, and high-speed railways. The large population means both a huge market and a great responsibility. Problems such as an aging population, the urban-rural gap, and environmental issues still exist. Nevertheless, in the period following the collapse of the Soviet Union, China, by pursuing a flexible policy in line with its national interests, has managed to become one of the major powers both in its region and in the world. After the 1990s, particularly following the collapse of the Soviet Union and the deepening of China's economic reforms, the Chinese automobile industry embarked on a path of strong development. At first, Chinese factories mainly operated as licensed assembly centers for foreign brands. However, over time, Chinese companies began to create their own brands and develop their own technologies. One of the biggest advantages of Chinese cars is their relatively low price and rich equipment. In the same price segment, Chinese brands usually offer more electronic systems, comfort equipment, and safety features. This increases interest in these cars, especially in developing countries, including the post-Soviet space. In recent years, design and interior quality have also improved significantly. Many brands that previously had the image of being cheap but low quality now compete much more seriously with their rivals. One of the main areas that distinguishes China's automobile industry is electric and hybrid vehicles. Since the government provides large subsidies and incentives for electric transport at the level of state policy, China has become the country that produces and sells the most electric cars in the world. The rapid growth of cities and the increase in people's incomes have also strengthened demand in the domestic market. Along with passenger cars, Chinese-made pickups, crossovers, and commercial vehicles are exported to many countries. New roads and logistics routes across Eurasia, as well as new markets for car exports, are opening up within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. Nevertheless, in some countries there are still questions regarding trust in Chinese cars. Issues such as long-term operation, the quality of spare parts, and the level of development of the service network remain important for buyers. However, the fact that the latest models show higher results in safety tests and receive certificates in accordance with international standards is gradually reducing these doubts. As a result, Chinese cars are no longer just a cheap alternative, but have become serious players in global competition, especially in the fields of electric transport and technological equipment. The expectation is that in the coming years, both the number of Chinese brands and their level of quality and technology will increase even further. The development of every country begins with strong education. China is one of the greatest examples of this. Behind the country's rapid economic rise over the last 40 years stands a huge education system. In China, education is not just about school. It is a national strategy. Directing children towards mathematics, science, and technology from primary school, strict discipline, constant hard work, and high competition are the main factors shaping the country's development. Main features of Chinese education. 1. Work habits are instilled in students from an early age. 2. Mathematics and technology classes are very strong. This later leads to the rapid development of China's technology sector. 3. Innovation laboratories and startup centers at universities are widely supported. 4. The Chinese government considers education the main key to development and invests billions of dollars in it every year. 5. Tsinghua, Peking University, and other universities today rank among the world's top universities. One of the reasons, perhaps the main one, why China has become one of the most powerful countries in the world is its systematic, goal-oriented, and strong education policy. The Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is a special administrative area located in the northwest of China, possessing a vast territory and a rich history. Local Turkic-speaking peoples often refer to this land as East Turkestan. This region stands out both as a historical center of the Silk Road and, today, for its strategic position in terms of energy, transportation, and trade. The region is inhabited mainly by Uyghurs. The Uyghurs are a Turkic-speaking people, the majority of whom are Muslim. They have their own language, script, cuisine, dances, and musical traditions. Alongside the Uyghurs, Han Chinese, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Hui, Dungan, Muslims, Tatars, and other small ethnic groups also live in the area. This multi-ethnic composition leads to the coexistence of different languages, clothing styles, foods, and customs in everyday life. Throughout history, the Xinjiang region has played the role of a bridge between East and West. The caravan routes that passed through it carried not only goods, but also cultures, religions, and ideas. In the Middle Ages, various Turkic states and khanates existed in this territory. Later, it was incorporated into the Qing Empire, and in the 20th century, as a result of various political initiatives and uprisings, several attempts at independence under the name East Turkestan took place. Finally, it was formalized as part of the People's Republic of China, with the status of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. In daily life, one of the largest cities of the region is Urumqi, while Kashgar is considered the traditional cultural center. On the streets, it is possible to see signs in both Uyghur and Chinese. In the bazaars, the smell of Uyghur foods such as kebab, pilaf, naan bread, samsa, and lagman can be felt. Mosques are the center of religious life, and the holidays of Ramadan and Eid al-Adha are widely celebrated. Weddings, folk dances, and musical traditions such as the 12 Muqam play an important role in people's identity. Economically, Xinjiang has large oil, gas, and coal deposits, as well as extensive pastures and agricultural lands. The railways and highways passing through it connect China with Central Asia and Europe. In the Belt and Road Initiative, this region is of particular importance because it is the territory through which one of the main overland routes passes. This creates conditions for the growth of cities and the development of industry, trade, and logistics. At the same time, there are a number of social and cultural challenges in the region. Ethnic relations, the preservation of national and religious identity, rapid urbanization, and migration processes are among the main factors that affect daily life and how people feel about themselves. On the one hand, the traditional Uyghur way of life and culture, and, on the other hand, the demands of modern Chinese society and state policy form a distinctive environment in this area. Thus, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is a multi-layered and complex region that attracts attention with its historical past, ethnic and cultural diversity, as well as its present and future. To understand this region, it is necessary to look carefully both at its history and at its present-day daily life.